I recently did a guide on how to defeat Kohazuna, and even though I don't have 1000 Horrorboros defeated yet, I figured I've beaten enough of them and learned a few things that I can share with you today to help you rack up your total wins against this long flying dragon. Number 1. Stats and mechanics. I'm going to quickly discuss how Horrorboros waves work first, as I think it's important to understand the mechanics of a wave before you can think about developing strategies. Also, from this point on, I'll likely be referring to the king as Boris, as it's just easier. Boris's health can range from 38,500 up to 55,000. It caps out at 55,000 when the team reaches 60% hazard. This health is reduced following a disconnect. Boris flies around the map in set paths and doesn't move closer to the ground. Its body doesn't damage you directly, instead its attack cycle is similar to a steelhead or booyah bomb. It slowly charges a bomb in its mouth, and as it moves around the map, it eventually launches it towards the ground at the players. The bomb in its mouth is where Boris should primarily be targeted. The bomb itself has 2,500 health, and any damage you deal to the bomb whilst it's charging damages Boris itself. If you cause the bomb to explode whilst it is still in the mouth of Boris, it causes it to misfire and deals 5,000 damage to itself. Combined, you will deal 7,500 damage total, 2,500 from the damage caused to the bomb, and then 5,000 from the resulting explosion. This cancels the attack of the bomb, and Boris will then restart charging another bomb. When the bomb is defeated and explodes, it causes damage to surrounding enemies in a similar way to how steelheads do. You can kill bosses and lessers this way, but we'll circle back to this later in the video. When the bomb is launched at the players, it deals 3.3 damage per frame. However, the radius of the bomb is quite big, meaning it's possible to get trapped or cornered, making it difficult to escape. Damage inflicted on the bomb will carry over to the next attack cycle if not fully defeated. The only time this differs is if the bomb has less than 500 HP left. It will then start with 500 HP for the next cycle. Its body can be attacked and damages its overall health, separate to the bomb in its mouth. This is important to remember throughout the wave. Golden eggs are used to deal damage in this wave, and they do 800 damage with direct hits. If the egg doesn't hit a target directly and falls to the ground, it deals 200 splash damage within a small radius. I think it's important to say that using the egg cannon in Xtra Waves is a different mechanic compared to throwing eggs in regular waves. The egg cannon doesn't deal the 100 damage ink explosion when thrown, it doesn't use your ink tank, and it doesn't pierce or go through objects. Number 2. Weapon rolls. Determining rolls during a Boris wave is a lot easier than during the other king waves. As a result, Boris often feels easier. Weapon rolls are very well defined with barely any need to deviate from them. Any weapon that can reach Boris's bomb should focus on it. Depending on which specific weapon you have, you'll either focus on the bomb for the majority of the wave, or switch between attacking the bomb and attacking bosses whenever needed. The way you can figure out which weapon should stick to focusing on Boris, or which weapon should flex, is by determining how strong your weapon is. Weapons like the Hydra, 96 Gal, the Snipe Writer, the Ballpoint, and even strong one-shot weapons like the Wellstring, the Tri-Stringer, the E-Liter, and the Tentabrella are all capable of not only reaching Boris's bomb without much struggle, but are able to unleash a lot of damage onto it. The same can be said for Grizzco weapons like the Charger, Bow, and Slosher. If you have a longer range weapon that isn't as powerful as the aforementioned weapons, such as Jet Squelcher, the Rapid Blasters, or the Explosher, then whilst I will say that it's important to hit the bomb anytime you can, your attention may be better served elsewhere, such as bosses or lessers or even map control. You should learn to recognise when the bomb is close to exploding and put your attention on shooting that briefly before switching back to help crowd control. Don't neglect the bomb just because you think your weapon is weak. For mid-range weapons, the advice is much the same, although some weapons like the Glugers, H3, Pro, and some of the Dualies, Sloshers, Chargers, and Blasters may want to focus more on the bomb if they're the only weapons on the comp with range. Sometimes your slightly weak mid-range weapon might be the best suited within a comp to directly attack the bomb. It's important to stay aware of this. Rollers, brushes, splatanas, and sombrellas are not always best suited to attacking Boris directly most of the time. There are niche ways you can do this, and I will talk more about using stage to your advantage later on in the video, but I'd recommend being the person to crowd control, work on static spawns, and throw golden eggs wherever possible. These weapons all have unique ways to maximise their killing potential, so being the person to take care of regular spawns will ensure you're utilising your weapon as best as possible. The other Grizzco weapons likely won't have the range to consistently reach Boris or its bomb. The Roller, Dualies and Stampers are all really unique in the way they attack, and as you might not be able to reach Boris, you might be better served by dealing with bosses on the ground to help your teammates who can actually reach Boris. Whilst the Blaster and the Brella are considered the weakest of the Grizzco weapons, they may just have the range to reach Boris on certain maps, so consider whether it's worth shooting at Boris or continue attacking bosses on the ground. For short range weapons, you're often stuck in a bit of a difficult place. You'll either struggle to damage regular spawns if you have a low damaging weapon like Splash, Ink Brush or Aerospray, or you'll feel like you have wasted potential if you have a weapon like the Sploosh, Reflux or Dapples. You kind of have to recognise where you're best suited in regards to the other players on your team. This comes down to recognising the strengths of the weapon in general. Short range weapons are frequently lightweight, ink efficient and speedy, meaning you may well be the best person suited to running around the map dealing with statics and keeping things well painted. Or maybe you'll find that your teammate with a powerful long range weapon needs help staying safe, so you can be their own bodyguard, helping to throw golden eggs along the way. Whilst you may struggle to do so, it's important to say that regardless of weapon role or class, you should aim to put damage on the king whenever you can. Being too rigid with roles and refusing to cover for gaps in comps doesn't always play out very well, especially in Freelance. Recognise what's needed and do your best to help. Number 3. Specials. Similar to Xtra Waves, the Crab Tank is the best special to have for Horrorboros waves. You can make the argument that Crab Tank is actually even more effective for Boris, as it allows anybody the chance to have the opportunity to reach Boris, regardless of which weapon you have, and even if it is just for 10 seconds. Because of how important the Crab is, you don't want to waste it. Hitting every shot with its turret mode can cause over 7,000 damage to Boris, and that isn't even taking into account the bomb explosion damage. Ideally you want to use it earlier on in the wave to ensure you can use it to its fullest potential and before any serious issues arise, such as teammates dying or overwhelming spawns. I try to use mine on the second Boris cycle. By this I mean after the team has collectively cleared the first set of spawns, I will often look for a safe spot to use the special. This is regardless of whether the first bomb has been cancelled or not. Because the turret mode of the Crab is so powerful, you'll destroy a bomb very quickly and the next one may not respawn quickly enough for the rest of the Crab to be used on it, so ensure that you put the rest of the shots into the body of the Boris. If you know a bomb is very likely to be cancelled imminently, then waiting briefly and starting up the Crab ready for the next cycle will ensure another way to maximise the efficiency of this special. The rest of the specials may be better suited for crowd control and boss spawns rather than the Boris directly. However, short explosive specials like Splashdown and Reef can both be used to aid in damaging the bomb when you know you're close to exploding it. The reach of both of these specials is surprisingly wide, so timing them so they damage the bomb whilst also helping with spawns on the ground can be very beneficial. Killer Whale can be used 2 different ways. I often find it more useful for static spawns, but if I have a comp that's struggling to reach the Boris, then I will use it on that. The same goes for Inkjet and Tri-Strike. They're all good specials that can be used for multiple different targets, but ultimately may be what you're missing in terms of range. Booyah, Kraken and Wavebreaker are mostly ineffective or completely ineffective against Boris, and I'd recommend their use for crowd control, either for clusters of spawns together or to help you survive a bit easier. An example of this is using the Wavebreaker to help you manage lessers whilst you shoot at the bomb. Number 4. Strategies. I think it's important to always remember numbers during Boris waves. Its bomb having 2,500 health is easy to remember, but also easy to work around. Each golden egg has 800 damage when thrown at the bomb itself, meaning you need 4 of them to cause the bomb to explode. However, 3 golden eggs causes 2,400 damage, meaning you only need to put an extra 100 damage on the bomb itself. Given that bosses spawn golden eggs in groups of 3, it's likely more efficient to use 3 golden eggs and your weapon. This way you can guarantee one boss in the field is enough to destroy the bomb and plan where your next boss will be defeated. Obviously, if your weapon isn't able to reach the bomb, then you'll have to stick with the 4 golden eggs. I mean, all of this is considering that nobody else is helping you at that moment. If just one of your teammates is able to put 100 damage on the bomb, then you can do this. This is why it's important to always be aware of the weapon you have and whether you can reach the bomb, because if you can, sometimes all you need to do is put 100 damage on it. More often than not, the total health of your Boris will be at the cap, which is 55,000. If you ignore the bomb in its mouth and just try to throw only golden eggs at its body, you'll need 69 nice eggs to defeat it. That's 23 bosses, which just either doesn't happen at certain hazards, or becomes completely overwhelming at other hazards. This is where you'll need to think about Boris bomb cycles. Given that you can do 7,500 damage by destroying the bomb in its mouth, you'll need to figure out how many times you need to do this to defeat it. The answer is 7.3 times, but theoretically 7 times is probably the minimum should you also be shooting or throwing golden eggs. However, you can lower this even further by using specials and damaging its body with your weapons and eggs whilst waiting for its bomb to reappear. This is also where you should think about using golden eggs to destroy bosses, essentially trading 1 golden egg for 3. This is why I think Boris feels like the easiest boss to defeat, as its attack cycle lends very well to helping the players, and unlike the other two, you have no downtime or cycles where Boris becomes unreachable, meaning that you can shred it without needing to stop. So we've spoken about weapon rules and what to primarily focus on if you're given a weapon that is ineffective at either hitting the bomb or reaching Boris itself, but I want to challenge you to the idea that you cannot be effective. Think of the maps we have in Salmon Run and think of some of the bosses we have too. On some maps, Boris flies close to the ground because the ground is elevated. This is even more obvious during high tide waves. Think of Sockeye, for example. From the spiral, you can reach Boris with every single weapon. Don't immediately think that you're not able to reach Boris just because you've got the shortest weapon in the game. This also applies to using some of the bosses. Fish sticks and slamming lids are 2 very important bosses to manipulate during Boris waves. I'd strongly argue against destroying sticks before they land, as they can provide amazing points for your short range, higher DPS weapons to stand on to just unleash so much damage into Boris. Lids are not as easy to manipulate as they will attack you if you overstay your welcome. However, it's possible to move around this attack and still remain on top of it. Using lids this way is probably better than using sticks, as when you're on a stick, bosses like moors and flyfish can still take you out rather easily. On a lid, you have a bit more breathing room and it will de-aggro some of these bosses off of you after a while. This is also how you can be really effective as a dynamo roller during Boris waves. For my last point, I just want to reiterate the fact that you can heavily damage and defeat a lot of bosses when you explode the bomb in Boris's mouth. The resulting explosion is big enough that it takes out all active bosses. The only difficulty with this is that because Boris is quite high off the ground, it might not reach the lessers or some of the bosses that are closer to the ground, such as scrappers or moors. But theoretically, it's possible to damage them and defeat them should you position them well when you know the bomb is soon to explode. This, again, is another reason why Boris is an easier king than the other two, as when played well with strategies like these, it becomes so easy to take out the bosses, resulting in extra waves that are able to be completed very quickly. I hope this video helps. Let me know what you think and good luck with your fights. If you liked this video and need more advice, I've got lots of videos on how to improve at Salmon Run, whether it's weapons, specials, maps or hazards, so check them out. I'll see you guys soon.